guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today I've got a comparison between a couple of knives that are pretty interesting. They're very close in price. They're exactly the same in terms of materials, and they're doing this thing that I'm going to call like high-end-ish. They've got some budget features, they've got some high-end features, and they're kind of putting them together to deliver something that has some pretty interesting characteristics, but isn't going to break the bank. Now, we have the Civivi here. Civivi, you guys know I appreciate an awful lot. They tend to do a really, really great job on their quality. Civivi is We Knives sort of budget brand, if you will. And then over here we have the Bestech Ascot. I previously reviewed this knife, and in fact, kind of what brought about this video was I started to review this knife, and that review should be coming up in the next few days after you see this. But when I was going to do I was bringing through comparisons, I'm like, these are so close that I need to have a little bit of a longer discussion. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to compare these guys for you and kind of share my thoughts and ultimately pick one that I prefer at the end. In the meantime, I would love to hear your comments down below. Tell me which one of these you would buy and why. Is it purely a matter of looks? Are there features that you like one over the other? And I will work in some things that maybe if you don't know, you'll be able to kind of glean as we work our way through. First off, let me point out the price point on these is a little different. The Ascot is going to be $88 and the Civivi is going to be $78. They're close, but they're not quite the same. I will say on either one of these, if you go to White Mountain Knives and use my discount code SHARPSTUFF, you can save 10% off, which will bring it down to, 70 something and 60 something. So a little bit better deal. And that also helps the channel. So it's a win-win-win, right? Now, let me start off here with size and weight. Both of these are larger knives. And so if you're not a fan of a larger knife, you probably won't want either one of these. If you are in that boat, Civivi has a few very, very interesting smaller knives, and I'm tempted to pick up some, even though I won't ultimately keep them, because I'm pretty compelled by some of the designs on a couple of their smaller knives. They're just too small for me to ultimately, put into my typical EDC circuit, if you will. So, size and weight on these, very close, but the Bestech is a substantial amount larger. Okay, so the Bestech is almost 9 inches overall. It's like 4 and 15/16 or something like that. The Civivi, on the other hand, is, did I say 4? Let's try 8 and 15/16. And the Civivi is 8.5. Blade length on this guy is 3 5/8, and on this guy it's 3 15/16. So nearly 4-inch blade here and a 3.5-inch blade. You're going to lose a little bit of that blade length to that choil, or cutting edge, I'm sorry, to that choil. We'll talk about that when we get to the blades themselves. Grip area on these, both are very substantial. So the Civivi has a full 4 inches of grip area. The Bestech has 4.25 inches of grip area. And even the weight is very close. So the Bestech comes in at 4.46 ounces and the Civivi at 4.6 ounces. One last number that you might want to know about if you're thinking of picking one of these up, the Bestech is over 1/2 inch thick, so it's a little bit thicker there. The Civivi is basically 1/2 inch thick, while the Bestech is about 9/16. All right, so both of these are pretty big knives in pocket. Both of them have nicely contoured handles, which does make them a little bit comfortable, a little bit more comfortable than, say, just a plain slab-sided G10 knife would be. But definitely these are knives you're going to notice in your pocket and probably aren't going to work if you're wearing, I don't know, linen dress pants or something like that, or a pair of like Under Armour gym shorts or something like that. Okay, both of these are a little more substantial. But honestly, as I actually put both of these in my pocket and walked around and tried to get an idea which one is more comfortable to carry around in pocket, and I really have to call it a tie. There's not a substantial difference between these two in terms of how they fit in pocket or how much they weigh. All right, so having declared that first comparison a tie, it's up to the individual features of each knife to figure out which one is going to get the win here, beginning with the blade. So Very similar blades, both satin finish, both D2, both flat grinds. Neither one is a full flat grind, but they're both very high flat grinds. Now, if I turn the knives this way, you can see what is the most substantial difference here. The Civivi is quite a bit thinner than the Bestech. Now, both of them are reasonably good slicers. The Civivi is both thinner behind the edge and thinner in blade stock, so it does slice material a little bit better than the Bestech. Um, you know, this is one of those things where, reviewers like me make a big deal out of this, but honestly, if you cut with both of these side by side, you go, yeah, they're very close. All right. You can notice a very slight difference. Both of them are quite capable. I have to say, because I like the thinness and the sliciness of this blade, I've got to give the win to the Civivi. It just slices a little bit better, okay? And for me, that takes priority. I know, by the way, both of these are D2 steel. And I know that there's something to be said for toughness, and the blade stock on this Bestech is going to make it pretty heavy duty. And I appreciate that an awful lot, especially for my own purposes. But these are knives I'm comparing, and so I feel like cutting ability needs to be the thing that kind of tips the scales in favor of the Civivi. Let's move on from that to lockup and deployment. Here we have a liner lock, ceramic bearings, and a flipper tab deployment. Here we have a liner lock, stainless steel bearings, and again, a flipper tab deployment. Very comparable knives. Both are very, very good. And I've got to say this, this is a great time to be into knives. And honestly, comparing the action on these two knives to any number of higher end knives that we could list here, give examples of, they are so good, guys. They really, really are. The detent on this guy could be just a little bit stiffer. I will say that, but it is so smooth. It is just as smooth as silk. On this side, the detent is actually very nice. It's very smooth. Now, the lighter blade doesn't fall shut as easily, but the detent is a little snappier. So interesting comparison, but I have to give this one to the Bestech for a couple of reasons. So let me quickly go through what those reasons are. First of all, the lock bar is a little more comfortable and easier to access. Second of all, the flipper tab is just a little more intuitive on the Bestech. The Civivi, I have to work a little harder to get a hold of that lock bar, and I have to think a little more to make sure that I flip the knife and get a good grip on that flipper tab. Both, again, are fantastic, but the Bestech is just a hair more refined and just a little bit smoother. And so while they're very, very close, all right, I've got to give the Bestech the win on the lockup and deployment. Also, by the way, I guess I should have mentioned this. I didn't mention it, but it was in my notes here. The thicker liners on the Bestech is very appealing to me. I know not everyone cares about that, and I've had those comments on videos where I've complained about thin liners before. I just don't like them, so I'm going to take points away. The Bestech with a thicker liner gets another nod there, and so pretty clearly comes out ahead of the Civivi. Finally, let's look at handle construction and ergonomics. Here we have very, very nice construction. Both of them are using this interesting material, which is a combination of G10 and carbon fiber. And then in both cases, they've layered the materials and then removed that to come up with a finish. Now, I have to say, I like the Bestech finish quite a bit better. I'm not going to include that in my scoring because that's purely subjective. I will be more concerned about a couple of points. So one, the Bestech has thicker liners and just seems a little more refined overall. The Civivi is a little bit thinner. Both, by the way, do a backspacer. I love the way the Civivi does their lanyard hole over the Bestech because I'm not a lanyard hole guy, so I like the fact that this isn't very noticeable, while this is a little more noticeable. Both are milled out to save on some weight here. Both are very attractive. Now, as I said, I like the Bestech just a little bit better. In terms of the overall sort of quality of the construction and the durability of the construction, I like the Bestech's being just a little beefier liners. However, when it comes to ergonomics, they're a little closer. And here I've got to give the nod to the Civivi. The Civivi is definitely more comfortable. So, I think we can kind of break this down into two sections where, in terms of, overall construction and design, especially with this nice big pivot collar, and anyway, the extra beefiness of the construction. I like the way the Bestech is built just a little bit more. However, I like the way the Civivi feels in hand. So that's 1 point for Bestech, 1 point for Civivi. And that really leaves us with a tie. I like the blade better on the Civivi. I like the action better on the Bestech. I like the build quality better on the Bestech. I like the ergonomics better on the Civivi. Now, hopefully we've covered enough stuff that you can make up your own mind. But now let's imagine, to kind of finish us off, let's imagine this. Someone comes in and, or, I don't want to, I meet someone on the street or something like that. They have both of these knives and they say, Kevin, here, I want to give you a knife. You've got to pick one. Which one am I going to go with? And guess what, guys? I don't know how you guys are going to feel about this, but for me, the answer is pretty definitively the Bestech. The feel in hand, the extra beefiness of the blade and the construction itself, and just the overall enjoyment factor of that slightly nicer action. The action on this feels like a much more expensive knife, and there's some amount of joy that I get out of that. And so I'm going to go with the Ascot, but just by a hair. Both of these are fantastic knives, and whatever one you pick, you cannot go wrong, especially if you're going to save 10%, so you're getting a better price as well. All right, guys, so that's the review. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to hear your comments down below on which one you would like. Of the features we discussed, which ones mean more to you. But I want to say an extra little thought here. You can consider this the end of this comparison, and just consider this, an extra thought that I'm kind of throwing in for free because I don't want to make a whole video about it. In addition to everything we've talked about, I have to say I like the designs in the Civivi catalog quite a bit better, right? If you said, Kevin, I'm going to give you 10 knives, either 10 Civivis or 10 Bestechs, I would take 10 Civivis because I would be more confident that I'm going to get knives that I enjoy. And if you are on White Mountain Knives anyway, because you're going to use my discount code, check out the lineup of Civivis. I think you'll be pretty impressed. I know I really, really find myself attracted to a lot of the Civivi knives, and the Bestechs, there's just fewer models that I really, really connect with. The other thought I have on this, and one of the things that sort of, sat in the back of my mind as I was preparing this video and making notes and thinking about reviewing this knife as well, is I wish both of these companies, and I wish a lot of companies in general, would move away from the D2 steel. I don't hate D2, but there are a couple of factors here that come into play. One, there have been some complaints, and actually there's some indication, in terms of evidence, that not every company is getting all that they can out of D2 steel. So we could get some better performance out of it if heat treats were more on point. But besides that, D2 is not a stainless steel, and there are other steels that are going to be very, very close in terms of edge holding, but are going to be stainless, which means as a reviewer, it's easier for me to recommend because I know not everyone who watches my videos is going to spend as much time and energy caring for knives as I do. And so if they would switch to like 9CR18 MOV or VG10 or something along those lines, 14C28N, I would be much, much happier. And again, I'd love to hear your comments down below if you agree or disagree. Thanks for watching. Again, we'll talk to you soon.